SCP-8002 Maslov's Fire Part 1. A question that has been brought up in the past in relation to the SCP universe is, what exactly is the extent of the Foundation's obligation towards society? Sure, their primary purpose is to protect the normal world from the abnormal, but in this pursuit they have amassed an incredible amount of power and capabilities. Much like Superman can go off and fight a world-destroying villain one day and rescue a cat out of a tree the next, the Foundation could easily use their capabilities to help people in countless ways. SCP-8002 is an anomaly which showcases one grand way the Foundation could help out, through miraculous healthcare. But when things go wrong, it really comes down to one concept: treating each other well. Let's take a look. The article begins with two individuals, Sams and Torres, discussing a situation in a hospital. Torres remarks that the bird's still dead for months or years yet, so they don't need to worry, but Sams isn't so sure, saying that even if it is, that just leaves them with a ticking time bomb underneath their feet. A voice then comes over the intercom, informing Director Torres that critical patients are inbound from Site-17. Sams says that they are just going to keep shooting it, so they need to come up with something. Sams points to a printout on Torres' desk with a photo of a small, stout woman with cropped gray hair and says that she's their ticket. Sams wants to pull her vitals and her history to get a plan together, so if they need to move, they can have it ready. Torres sighs and says that he'll fund it a bit, but they don't need to do anything yet, as the bird's still steady and she's likely under their influence. The two then stand, putting on their coats, and look out the door down the yellowing linoleum hall. Elsewhere in the hospital, something is catching fire. SCP-8002 is a thaumial anomaly, meaning that it assists in some way with the Foundation's operations, and is the SCP Foundation's primary hospital and medical center, a vast subterranean complex incorporating both outpatient clinics and inpatient treatment facilities for up to 150,000 simultaneous patients. Many of the mechanisms employed in its operations are either mundane or commonplace among Foundation facilities, but its core anomaly is Cleric, an anomalous life support system and biological regeneration engine created by the Medical Division. Cleric emits a variety of electromagnetic energy in the far ultraviolet range known as cleric radiation, which provides a variety of benefits to the exposed. These benefits include faster and more efficient hemostasis, rapid tissue proliferation, reduced incidence of infection, reduced incidence of infectious disease transmission, reduced incidence of cancerous cell growth, fewer cellular transcription errors, and reversal and recovery from otherwise untreatable anomalous conditions. When combined with SCP-8002's industrial-scale quick care systems, Cleric allows the Foundation to facilitate mass, rapid, and discreet treatment of civilians affected by anomalous events, admitting and treating as many as 12,500 patients per hour. Cleric radiation is the first-line method of treatment for a large variety of anomalous conditions, and forms a vital part of the organization's operational infrastructure. The Foundation operates 8002 as a healthcare conglomerate under the name Aeonian Health Systems Incorporated, which is also a core part of job security plans for many Foundation personnel. Current estimates predict as many as 86% of Foundation staff members will visit 8002 for cleric therapy at least once during their careers, as exposure to anomalous harm remains commonplace despite the Foundation's efforts to improve containment security. Cleric itself is housed deep beneath 8002 in a secure area of the facility, being self-maintaining, and access to it is forbidden. We'll get to a full description of Cleric, as well as its design, location, and the suspected reasons behind its gradual failure over the next 18 months later. We're then given a provider profile on an Andrea Maslov, MD. Maslov has clearance level 3 and specializes in neurology, recurring anomalies, and chronic pain. She joined Aeonian Health Systems in 2021 after serving 18 years as a Foundation MTF field medic. She's a former Type Red rejuvenator, meaning that she can anomalously heal others and herself, but she now works with victims of chronic injury or illness who cannot be fully treated by Cleric. In her spare time, she enjoys bouldering, pulp romance novels, and gardening, especially root vegetables and winter gourds. We're given a care log for a patient named Henry Peck that she's looking after, a 36-year-old man presenting with subacute craniofacial pain on the right side. Pain began after accidental exposure to an SCP and is consistent with others exposed to the same anomaly. Peck visited a topside clinic 6 weeks ago and was advised to try anti-allergy medications, but he failed these treatments and was referred to SCP-8002 by a supervisor after he began experiencing auditory hallucinations. Peck sits nervously in a room when Maslov comes in, dressed in aqua blue medical scrubs and weather-worn white Crocs adorned with pumpkins. Behind her trails her young technical assistant. She introduces herself as Maslov, saying it's her pleasure, and squeezes his hand once before withdrawing. She says that he has been hurting some time in the face, and he says for about 6 months, to which she says that they will fix. She consults his chart and remarks that he tried sinus treatments, when it's obviously his nervous system. She says that they have plenty better for that than the water pot you pour in the nose, and Peck laughs, saying that he's looking forward to her help. Maslov looks him up and down and says that he doesn't need her, he needs Cleric. Cleric is magic robot doctor, far better than a babbling old woman like her. Peck seems hesitant, however, and she asks him if he's scared of robots, as that is hardly feasible in their line of work. She mentions the one they have now that is like a giant samurai in a hat which men can ride inside, remarking that she thought they were having a budget crisis. The tech interrupts her, and she apologizes, asking why he doesn't want CR therapy. Peck replies that it isn't that, but he heard that she could maybe help, and she understands. She pulls up her undershirt, exposing her abdomen, where a huge black mark can be seen running along her side. It seems to bubble, coursing along her skin like a living thing. She says that this thing has been in her for 3 years, but she lowers her shirt, stating that her and the tech had just had lunch, to which the tech thanks her. She explains that she cannot help him that way, not anymore. If she didn't have that mark, she could heal 200 MTF soldiers at once, but now she's always healing that thing. She can barely get over a cold now, and if she weren't so gifted, it would have killed her long ago. Peck says that he's sorry, and she replies that it is terrible, and she'd love to say otherwise, as people always want a happy story. Peck asks if it hurts, to which she says, often. And Peck says that it consumes you, but he knows his face is nothing like that. Maslov disagrees, however, saying that no pain is better than another, and we live with what we get. Peck says that he can't stop thinking about it, and it hurts all the time. Maslov tells him that she will not let him live in pain, and she cannot give him what he wanted, but she can give him Cleric. Peck is still hesitant, saying that he's seen some things from other people, and Maslov agrees that there are rumors around it. That's natural given the miracle of the thing, and of course the Foundation is a masterful generator of conspiracies. Half of her staff are convinced that the gumball machine in the atrium is actually the site director. The tech chimes in to say that she saw it move, but Maslov moves on, telling Peck that if he wants to try medical therapy, she will not blame him. There's a drug that works on his condition somewhat and will bring a little relief, but she wants to heal him fully, so she suggests cleric. She believes it to be safe for him, in small doses, despite these rumors, and that's her recommendation. She asks him if she can show him, to which he says okay. She heads over to the wall and retrieves a small bright orange box with a button, handing it to Peck. She says that this switch will lower the shielding around this room, exposing them to cleric and allowing its radiation to enter. They can cut it off any time, so Peck agrees for just a moment and pushes the button. The room is bathed in white light, and Maslov's side, as well as Peck's right jaw, suddenly ignite in red flames, causing Peck to scream. Despite this, he says that it doesn't hurt, and in fact, the pain is gone. They sit back down, burning, and Maslov says that this is much like what she did before, but cleric won't cure them. It doesn't work on chronic harms, but it holds them at bay, so they simply have to return and be retreated. She recommends twice weekly to keep him without pain, but he hesitates, looking at the fire on Maslov's side and licking his lips, and says no before pushing the button again. He tells her that he doesn't want that, as he's seen them, how their eyes look, how they sweat, how they breathe. Maslov sighs and says that she understands, but she will provide a prescription for that drug to give him some relief. He takes it, thanking her, and saying that he's sorry that she couldn't help more before leaving. Maslov turns to her tech afterwards and says, his loss, before dismissing the tech until her next meeting. She then picks up the exposure switch and presses the button again. On June 23, 2023, a critical containment breach necessitated mass treatment at 8002, with the affected population including 24,000 civilians and 146 Foundation personnel. Civilians were prioritized, per protocol, followed by urgent personnel, while others were waitlisted for Aeonian health provider availability within 4 to 6 months. Civilians were triaged for access and placed into 8002's Mass Treatment and Amnestic Processor, or MTAP. MTAP was designed in conjunction with the cleric system and is a group of mass conveyance elevators with a capacity of 8,900 riders per hour. It subjects passengers to increasingly concentrated CR as they descend. Once all passengers have been normalized, they are given amnestics and returned to the surface. While MTAP successfully resolved at least 17,000 of the cases, the system concluded its descent without fully treating the remainder. Recognizing this, MTAP refused to reset to its starting point, trapping the civilians on board and allowing their infections to worsen for 38 minutes before staff took notice. Anomalously affected passengers subsequently broke free of their restraints and harmed one another, resulting in a large number of casualties and partial contamination of 8002 and the MTAP system. Analysis has determined that Cleric failed to subject passengers to sufficient CR during MTAP's descent, despite routinely providing sufficient radiation in the past. Testing has since determined that the total CR submersion of 8002 has been dropping site-wide since at least 2019. Containment specialists and armed security personnel have been dispatched to Cleric's security chamber in an attempt to reinvigorate the system. Director Torres sent a note to site administrators to comment on the estimates prepared by the financial office about the huge losses that they'd suffer if they lost 8002's cleric radiation. He assures them that they're on top of it, as caregivers are being asked to make overtime hours available to meet the demand, and they're looking into rationing CR access for non-essential staff. He knows that this isn't a popular choice, as it leads to long wait times, so he tells them to please let him know if they or their families need care so they can work around the lines. We're given another care log, this time of a 26-year-old man named Hamden Tuck, a member of MTF Omicron 112. Tuck presents with spontaneous lower leg pain after a routine patrol in Perth, and he has not experienced similar pain in his recollection. The pain is worse when standing, but not when walking, and worse in the right leg than the left. Other members of his patrol all report similar pain with identical time of onset, and the symptoms are similar to those of other known sufferers of acute attacks of so-called Perth's knockers, after anomalous influence of an uncontained SCP instance in the area. Maslov enters the room, talking on the phone, as her tech trails behind. She tells whoever she's talking to not remove their bandages just because it is sparkling underneath, asking if they forgot who they work for. After hanging up, she apologizes to Tuck, explaining that they now have them working telephones in addition to halls, as less cleric healing means more for them to do, and there were already too few of them on this floor. Tuck understands, and the two shake hands, but Tuck asks if she needs a second, as he doesn't want to be rude, but she's sweating. Maslov scoffs at the nerve of these young people, but says that she is working hard but is perfectly well. She consults his chart and says that she was a field medic for many years, so she's seen plenty like this. Knockers just need Ziansin medications and rest, and even without cleric, he'll be well soon. Tuck replies that that's a relief, and says that he knew she was the one to see. She asks if he requested her, and he says he more just got lucky, as he's been on a list for weeks. It would have been months, but he was allowed to jump up because he knew the commander. Maslov says that that's the way it goes these days. The only way to get timely care is to know somebody. Tuck says that he was happy to see that she was a former MTF, and thanks her for her service. Maslov also thanks him for his, and asks where he's based. After replying that he's based out of Site 189, the two laugh about the plumbing issues there, and Tuck asks if she's been seeing more MTF agents lately. Maslov says yes, the entire hall is full of them, and asks if Command is doing some large operation. Tuck says if anything, it's been quiet, but he hesitates before saying more, looking towards Maslov's tech. Maslov nods to her and says that this young man wants to rat out a $1 trillion shadow organization, so give them a moment. The tech promptly leaves, and Maslov tells Tuck not to worry, as she's used to it. Tuck is still hesitant, and Maslov says she should have known better than to joke with Operation Security. Tuck concedes and says that Command isn't really adjusting. He thinks that they're used to having 8002 on hand to stitch them up and toss them back into the field. He asks how many MTFs have had a trained medic along, and Maslov acknowledges that few of them had. Tuck continues, saying that even now that cleric's on ration, they're still just throwing them in wherever they want. On their last trip, they got to the drop point and pretty much immediately, Delta went down. The two share a knowing look, and both state that it's always Delta. They radioed Command, who tells them to move him outside and leave him and Beta out there, as they'll send a pickup. Delta's their comms guy, so someone grabs the kit and they keep going forward. They get a few hours in, and another 2 more guys go down from some nasty memetic stuff. They have to get them out right then, so they pull back. It's 3 hours to the entrance, plus another 90 minutes because they're carrying these guys who can't really use their appendages. By the time they get out, it's been maybe 8 or 9 hours since they saw Delta and Beta, but they were still there. The pickup never showed, and they found out later Command radioed 8002 dispatch rather than the closer site they were supposed to. Dispatch is so overloaded that they deferred it and it got lost in the network, nearly costing Delta his leg. Maslov spits, then hastily wipes it up, cursing, and Tuck agrees that that's how they all felt. They approved CR, and it covered their ass, but he wonders if that's all 8002 has been doing all this time. There's no medics at other sites, no training increase, and they're still cutting budgets. Now, without Cleric, he doesn't think they know what to do for them. Maslov's tech knocks on the door, letting her know she has 2 minutes left, as she still has 4 more patients to see in the next half hour. Tuck asks her if she thinks that they'll fix Cleric, and if they know how. Maslov considers him for a while before saying that she believes they will, but that's no excuse for this, throwing them away. Forever, they are tainted by this, but she believes they will fix it, and they can depend on help from them. She then corrects herself, saying to not think of it like depending on them. The Foundation is one of the places to look, and it's not a bad place to look, but ultimately they are caring for themselves, finding the resources which they can. By accepting help, they care for themselves. Tuck says that he'll keep that in mind. As cleric function has continued to deteriorate, staff care wait times have exceeded 1 full year, so in order to reduce waits, Aeonian Health has extended its night and weekend hours for non-cleric care. Additionally, they have required providers to attend to more patients per floor, leading to environments in which multiple anomalous hazards may be mixed without full staff attention. Of course, this led to an incident on July 10th, 2023, when outpatient clinics in a memetics wing were filled nearly to capacity, and a hitherto unrecognized interaction occurred between 2 different info hazards in adjacent rooms, spreading a hostile memetic and physiological effect throughout the floor. This effect partially degloved victims' hands and feet, causing distress and leading to a crush for the exits before command ordered the floor sealed and protective anti-memes fired. These anti-memes erased the memories of everyone on the floor, roughly 3,600 people, for the past 3 weeks. This likely contained the anomaly, but per protocol, the floor will remain sealed until Cleric can be fully restored. Restoration of Cleric is now an alpha priority across the Foundation, with MTF resources and firefighters being recruited from other sites, alongside ballistics engineers currently awaiting clearance upgrades so they may begin work in the chambers beneath 8002. Director Torres sends out another note to site administrators, commenting on the repeated requests from care staff to recruit and train more medics, while the cleric problems continue. These requests are denied, and while he understands their concern, their estimates suggest that they may revive cleric fully within the next few months. He also urges them to not reduce their activity for fear of injury to personnel, but, as always, to keep financial outcomes in mind in this uncertain period. To ensure that cleric hours are available to priority administrators and MTF, care staff have been asked to select 16 weeks in the next calendar year for additional overtime hours. In another care log, Maslov treats Elizabeth Lamb, a 57-year-old woman in long-term care for anomalous pain managed with multiple medications. She presents with newly intensified issues following CR rationing for non-essential personnel, and due to communication problems resulting from her condition, her wife Vivian accompanies her to her appointments. Maslov is sitting alone in a room, bathing in cleric radiation, her side smoldering. There are loud voices and footsteps outside in the hall as the entire floor is packed with patients, and a nurse pokes her head through the door. She gasps as Maslov leaps up and covers her burning wound before switching off the CR. She asks if the nurse hasn't heard of knocking, as this is a hospital, so who knows what goes on here. The nurse tells her that she has an emergency call from a Mrs. Lamb, but since it's her break, they were going to send her to another doctor. Maslov says that she will see her, so Elizabeth and Vivian are sent in. Maslov greets the two, and says that she has to take her own recordings right now, as her tech is away. Apparently, her father was one of the people trapped on the sealed-off floor, a decision that she comments as being highly questionable. Elizabeth interrupts her and says that she wants Cleric, but Vivian tells her that there isn't much available, so they have to stop it for now. Elizabeth replies that she needs it to live, and although Vivian says that they'll find another way, Maslov remarks that they prescribe it very carefully and in small doses, so it's safe. Vivian asks to speak with Maslov aside, where she asks if Cleric radiation is addictive. Her wife hasn't been herself in months, ever since her higher dose treatments began, and she always wants to be back here for the next submersion. She has shaking and sweats, and her communication is getting even worse. She never stops asking to come back for more, and this morning she wouldn't even look at her or their daughter until she told her that she'd take her back here and ask. She looked into it in the 8002 records, but it just describes the impacts of increased immersion, with no public information on any risks or testing or anything else she'd expect to see in a Foundation file. Maslov finally speaks, and says that it's assumed to be anomalous medicine, and typical tests are often not performed. The Foundation has been relying upon it for years, and it heals many people, but to be honest, she's not sure if it's addictive or not. Vivian replies that if she doesn't know whether this treatment is harmful, or even how it works, how can she keep prescribing it in such high doses to her wife? Maslov counters that her prescriptions are quite moderate, and she follows the guidelines for dose reduction. She would not prescribe it if she believed it would do harm. After a pause, Vivian says that Maslov knows what it's doing to her, and she keeps giving it anyways. She thought that when they switched to a female provider it would finally be different, as it took 2 years before Dr. Sams even acknowledged that Elizabeth was sick at all. Now she's prescribing something that she knows is poisoning her. Maslov shouts for her to stop, as she would never do that. She would never conspire to give something that knowingly does harm. And while the Foundation is not perfect, Cleric is a miracle. She rubs her side briefly, and says that she is not prescribing a high dose today, and she will monitor her carefully. She promises Vivian that she is on her side, but for now, she must get her wife out of pain. Vivian says that she understands. She's just scared of what this might do to her. She finishes by remarking that they need Maslov to do better, along with all of the staff here. 6 months later, and the Foundation has been unsuccessful in restoring Cleric's functionality. With the CR immersion at near zero, an SCP broke containment and made its way to a populated city in New York, with initial casualties at 13,409. Exposed individuals fanned out to the surrounding countryside and created additional instances, with full casualties to date being unknown, and the anomaly remains uncontained. Cleric exposure is the only known treatment for victims of this anomaly, and until Cleric is restored, site personnel in the US East region have been placed on lockdown to await further instructions. The Overseer Council has authorized 8002 site staff to use any means available to reinvigorate the Cleric engine. Maslov is treating another individual, a 47-year-old male named Oscar Richards, with mundane lower back pain. Per the request of the site director, he is being considered for immediate CR immersion and has been admitted to the Floor 8 clinic. Maslov is visibly exhausted and shaking as she enters the room, and there is shouting outside in the hall. Maslov initially forgets his name, and then says that she has ordered a prescription for a medication, but Richards interrupts her and says that that's not his. She then apologizes and asks him to explain his condition to her once more, despite her seeing him half an hour ago before leaving. Maslov swipes through her forms, with there being 40 of them in this hallway alone, before finding his. Another doctor leans into the room and asks Maslov how long it takes her to bring a script, as they need her out there. Richards tells her that he's just trying to get a cleric authorization. Maslov says that there's a crisis going on and they have almost none left. Richards replies that he doesn't know anything about that, but he's in pain and it's time to reauthorize him. He asks if she can handle signing on the line before sliding over a cleric authorization form with the clear gold stamp of the Site Directors Council on it. Maslov signs the form as Richards smirks, before the door to the room opens and two men in medical scrubs enter, Sams and Torres, flanked by several more men in neat gray suits. Torres addresses Dr. Maslov, who seems to recognize him and scowls at him. Torres then notices Richards, tightening his lips upon seeing him, and tells Maslov that, on the Overseer's orders, she needs to come with them. We haven't really gotten to the meat of the article yet, but we can certainly see several themes popping up, including arrogance of bureaucracy and the misuse of authority. Of course, there's more going on with Cleric and the healing treatments than we're aware of at this point, and Maslov definitely has a large part to play yet. It is good to see the Foundation actually using some of their anomalous capabilities to help out the general public, but every rose has a thorn, so we'll have to keep going in part 2 to see where exactly things are going wrong.